David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, Chapter 45. Mr. Dick fulfills my aunt's prediction. One night, when I had been married some months, Mr. Dick put his head into the parlor and said with a significant cough, "You shouldn't speak to me without inconveniencing yourself, Trotwood, I am afraid." "Certainly, Mr. Dick," said I. "Come in." Mr. Dick sat down with greater gravity than usual and looked at me. "Now, boy," said Mr. Dick, "I am going to put a question to you." "As many as you please," said I. "What do you consider me, sir?" asked Mr. Dick, folding his arms. "A dear old friend," said I. "Thank you, Trotwood," returned Mr. Dick, laughing, but reaching across in high glee to shake hands with me. "But I mean, boy," resuming his gravity, "what do you consider me in this respect?" touching his forehead. I was puzzled how to answer, but he helped me with a word. "Weak," said Mr. Dick. "Well," I replied dubiously, "rather so." "Exactly," cried Mr. Dick, who seemed enchanted by my reply. "That is Trotwood. When they took some of the trouble out of you-know-whose head and put it you-know-where, there was a—" Mr. Dick made his two hands revolve very fast about each other a great number of times, and then brought them into collision and rolled them over and over one another to express confusion. "There was that sort of thing done to me somehow, eh?" I nodded at him, and he nodded back again. "Now, you are a scholar, Trotwood," said Mr. Dick. "You are a fine scholar. You know what a learned man, what a great man the doctor is. Not proud in his wisdom, humble, condescending even to poor Dick, who is simple and knows nothing, and his beautiful wife is a star," said Mr. Dick. "A shining star. I have seen her shine, sir, but," bringing his chair nearer and laying one hand upon my knee, "clouds, sir, clouds." I answered the solicitude which his face expressed by conveying the same expression into my own and shaking my head. "Doctor not angry with her, Trotwood," he said. "No, devoted to her." "Then I have got it, boy," said Mr. Dick. The sudden exultation with which he slapped me on the knee and leaned back in his chair, with his eyebrows lifted up as high as he could possibly lift them, made me think him further out of his wits than ever. He became as suddenly grave again, and leaning forward as before, said, first respectfully taking out his pocket handkerchief, as if it really did represent my aunt, "Most wonderful woman in the world, Trotwood. Why has she done nothing to set things right?" "Too delicate and difficult a subject for such interference," I replied. "Fine scholar," said Mr. Dick, touching me with his finger. "Why has he done nothing?" "For the same reason," I returned. "Then I have got it, boy," said Mr. Dick, and he stood before me more exultingly than before, nodding his head and striking himself repeatedly upon the breast, until one might have supposed that he had nearly nodded and struck all the breath out of his body. "A poor fellow with a craze, sir," said Mr. Dick. "A simpleton, a weak-minded person, present company, you know," striking himself again, "may do what wonderful people may not do. I'll bring them together, boy. I'll try. They'll not blame me. They'll not object to me. They'll not mind what I do. If it's wrong, I'm only Mr. Dick. And who minds Dick? Dick's nobody. Woo!" He blew a slight contemptuous breath, as if he blew himself away. To my surprise, I heard no more about it for some 2 or 3 weeks, though I was sufficiently interested in the result of his endeavors, descrying a strange gleam of good sense, I say nothing of good feeling, for that he always exhibited, in the conclusion to which he had come. At last I began to believe that, in the flighty and unsettled state of his mind, he had either forgotten his intention or abandoned it. One fair evening, when Dora was not inclined to go out, my aunt and I strolled up to the doctor's cottage. It was autumn, when there were no debates to vex the evening air, and I remember how the leaves smelt like our garden at Blunderstone as we trod them underfoot, and how the old unhappy feeling seemed to go by in the sighing wind. It was twilight when we reached the cottage. I was conscious of Mr. Dick standing in the shadow of the room. How my aunt and I came to be left together near the door, unless her eyes were quicker than mine, and she held me back, I have forgotten if I ever knew. But this I know, that we saw the doctor before he saw us, sitting at his table among the folio volumes, in which he delighted resting his head calmly on his hand. that in the same moment we saw Mrs. Strong glide in, pale and trembling, that Mr. Dick supported her by the arm, that he laid his other hand upon the doctor's arm, causing him to look up with an abstracted air, that as the doctor moved his head, his wife dropped down on one knee at his feet, with her hands imploringly lifted, fixed upon his face, the memorable look I have never forgotten. "Doctor," said Mr. Dick, "what is it that's amiss? Look here." "Annie," cried the doctor, "not at my feet, my dear." "Yes," she said, "I beg and pray that no one will leave the room. Oh, my husband and father, break this long silence. Let us both know what it is that has come between us." "Annie," said the doctor tenderly, taking her in his hands, "my dear, if any unavoidable change has come in the sequence of time upon our married life, you are not to blame. The fault is mine and only mine. There is no change in my affection, admiration, and respect. I wish to make you happy. I truly love and honor you. Rise, Annie, pray." But she did not rise. After looking at him for a little while, she sank down closer to him, laid her arm across his knee, and dropping her head upon it, said, "I have any friend here who can speak one word for me and for my husband in this matter. If I have any friend here who has anything within his knowledge, no matter what it is, that may help to mediate between us, I implore that friend to speak." There was a most profound silence. After a few moments of painful hesitation, I broke the silence. "Mrs. Strong," I said, "there is something within my knowledge which I have been earnestly entreated by Dr. Strong to conceal, and I have concealed until tonight. But I believe the time has come when it would be mistaken faith to conceal it any longer." "Our future peace," she said, "may be in your hands. I trust it confidently to your not suppressing anything." Thus, earnestly besought, I made no reference to the doctor for his permission, but without any other compromise of the truth than a little softening of the coarseness of Uriah Heep, related plainly what had passed in the same room that night. When I had finished, Annie remained for some few moments excuse me, silent, with her head bent down as I have described. Then she took the doctor's hand. He was sitting in the same attitude as when we had entered the room, and pressed it to her breast and kissed it. Excuse me. Mr. Dick softly raised her, and she stood. And when she began to speak, leaning on him and looking down upon her husband, from whom she never turned her eyes, "All that has ever been in my mind since I was married," she said in a low, submissive, tender voice, "I will lay bare before you. I could not live and have one reservation, knowing what I know now." "Nay, Annie," said the doctor mildly, "I have never doubted you, my child. There is no need, indeed, there is no need, my dear. About my cousin Malden, I had liked him," she spoke softly, but without any hesitation, "very much. We had been little lovers once. If circumstances had not happened otherwise, I might have come to persuade myself that I really loved him, and might have married him, and been most wretched. There can be no disparity in marriage like unsuitability of mind and purpose." I pondered these words even while I was studiously attending to what followed, as if they had some particular interest or some strange application that I could not divine. "There can be no disparity in marriage like unsuitability of mind and purpose. No disparity in marriage like unsuitability of mind and purpose. There is nothing," said Annie, "that we have in common. I have long found that there is nothing. If I were thankful to my husband for no more, instead of for so much, excuse me, I should be thankful to him for having, pardon me, for having saved me from the most mistaken impulse of my undisciplined heart." She stood quite still before the doctor and spoke with an earnestness that thrilled me. Yet her voice was just as quiet as before. "The cause of the late change in you, which I have seen with so much pain and sorrow, has been made clear tonight. And by an accident, I have also come to know tonight the full measure of your noble trust in me. Even under that mistake, I do not hope that any love and duty I may render in return will ever make me worthy of your priceless confidence. But with all this knowledge fresh upon me, I can lift my eyes to this dear face, revered as a father's, loved as a husband's, and solemnly declare that in my lightest thought I have never wronged you, never wavered in the love and the fidelity I owe you. She had her arm around the doctor's neck, and he leant his head down over her, mingling his gray hair with her dark brown tresses. In the silence that ensued, my aunt walked gravely up to Mr. Dick, without at all hurrying herself, and gave him a hug and a sounding kiss. "You are a very remarkable man, Dick," said my aunt with an air of unqualified approbation, "and never pretend to be anything else, for I know better." With that, my aunt pulled him by the sleeve and nodded to me, and we three stole quietly out of the room and came away. And that is the end of chapter 45.